Hello, I am Zinfogel. So, it's been a whole year of discussion videos. The first discussion video I ever did was October last year, and I like to think I am not trash at this game anymore. But well, we got a new Datamine here, so let's get started. First up, we have Signasuit Misty and Vaporeon, a water-type tech. I have read mixed opinions regarding this unit. I think Vaporeon is okay and it can be salvaged, but its utility is either stage specific or it requires some intricate setup. Vaporeon's gimmick is stat control. It has Mist and Haze. Mist sets up a shield that prevents stat drops, while Haze removes positive stat raises from the enemy. These aren't new concepts. You can block stat drops with Impervious or just Ministry Remove, and Snash is functionally identical to Haze. However, Haze is AoE, which has miscellaneous applications. So, Mist is kinda whatever. I have never felt debuffs were an active threat until extreme battles, like with Hoenn Bodies Unite or Giovanni's Malice. But these stages were designed for sync pairs made to counter debuffs. Standard content, at worst, may hit you with Snarl or Icy Wind. However, Haze is a bit more useful. Stages that raise evasion or crit are really annoying, and if the rest of your lineup is very self-sufficient, Haze is worth a team slot. Besides stat control, Misty has all the markings of a tank. The turn move raises defense for the user and special defense for the party. Vaporeon has regeneration upon entry for some recovery, as well as a 1-bar spam. And Vaporeon has a 50% chance to raise evasion when using its moves. Now, this is eerily reminiscent of Psyduck, and the concerning part is that Psyduck is a better defensive unit. Psyduck has a better bulk and potion for proactive healing. Vaporeon's defense kinda blows for a tank. A heavy hit is going to pop this like a balloon, unless Misty is at 6-star EX potential. The more unique utility that Misty brings to the table lies in charging Infliction 4. When you use Mist or Haze, Vaporeon recharges the move gauge by 4 bars. Misty is already a great gauge generator, and this grants the opportunity to spam some gauge-heavy moves. Lastly, Misty is a tech multiplier, is the same one that Bryson, Grimsley, and Lear have. When the enemy has no stat increases, you get your nuke. This can be real tricky to set up, because enemies in this game love spamming buffs, so they can snipe your nuke with an untimely party-wide trainer move, which forces you to use Haze again. However, Vaporeon's special attack is solid, and this is a water-type sync move, so you can enhance it with Rain Dance. Misty's nuke is actually absurd. It's on a similar threshold to Lear. Like with minimal buffs, let's say +2 special attack, +2 evasion, and a 4-bar sync power flux. She outdamages May's Rain nuke without accounting for hide and sync. Striker Vaporeon is very high maintenance, but its nuke is terrifying. It needs minimal buffs for some insane damage. If you force me to summarize Vaporeon, I would say it's a worse Psyduck with stat control. You kinda have to enter a stage knowing what's going to happen in order to truly reap the benefits of this unit. And as a striker, Misty is very greedy. Vaporeon needs full offensive support and Rain Dance, and its DPS is kinda terrible, but at least it comprises the tanking role for a team. Anyway, the 1-5 grid has nothing useful. The 2-5 gives you NPRs for everything, as well as Agile Entry 1 and Grand Entry 1 for some preemptive buffs. There is also Bob and Weave for a BP multiplier. If you grab this and all the Water Gun tiles, Vaporeon has DPS reminiscent to that of Barry and Empoleon. It's worse, but it's coming from a 1-bar move, so I can't complain. The full grid is where Misty becomes really fun. She gains a ton of passives that give her status moves utility outside of their original effects, like with Propulsion Tree for Haze and Mist. You are already incentivized to spam these moves to generate move gauge, so this turns Misty into a competent sync accelerator. At this stage, Misty can also buff defense and special defense when using her status moves, and she also gains a Shifty Striker 4 tile, so she can gather evasion buffs a little quicker, which is relevant for her evasion multipliers. One of the bigger metagame uses for Misty is as a Lear partner. Lear is entirely self-sufficient, so he can afford a team slot for Misty. Lear also plays for sync acceleration, and Misty can give him some buffs to augment the Rising Tide. More importantly, she can haze before Lear syncs to guarantee his nuke. Something really funny I have seen on Lear gameplay is that people normally ignore his innate sync multiplier, and they use nuke using Rising Tide and his 6-star EX tech bonus, which is totally fair because using Snatch is that big of a bother. But Misty can open that door for him so he can nuke more consistently. To that end, I would run a grid like this, just grabbing every utility tile related to Mist and Haze. You don't need Team Smart Infliction because Misty's turn move already raises special defense for a party, but if you want to maximize the stat, then you can drop some of these tiles. But I would encourage you to grab every defense tile available if Misty is tanking, because she really appreciates the stats, so she can tank more consistently. Or you can go the defensive route and grab a Water Gun MGR9 to erase the need for speed support. I need to write home that Misty is an excellent gauge generator, and it's an appreciable aspect of her kit. Now, coming back to Misty's sync nuking mode, this is easier to set up than Nessa and Redno, but remember Misty needs full offensive babysitting as well as Rain Dance if she wants to strike. And you have to deal with the Haze shenanigans. But if you can accomplish this nuke, Misty reaches some scary numbers at 6-star EX potential. So, Vaporeon is a little fragile for my liking, but it has good utility. The problem is that we demand a lot more from sync pairs these days. This may be DNA's way of telling us that they are going to spam debuffs more often in the future. Up next, we have Signasuit Erika and Leafeon, a grass-type tech. She is the most competent unit in this batch. Erika is on a similar tier to May and Swampert, and that should say enough. So, this is our first gacha manual Sunsetter. Despite the existence of sync pairs like Maxi and Silver, who can summon permanent Sunny Day, Manual Sun is a role in very high demand. Why is Sun such a big deal? This field effect boosts fire-type damage by 50%, and it activates a whole host of Sun-based passives. Sun is particularly handy for fire-type strikers. Signature Red, Hilda and Leon can nuke a lot harder with Weather Up, and this is the sole reason Blaine and Tech Ninetales see usage whatsoever. Relative to them, Leafeon is a Grass-type Sunsetter. It misses out on fire theme skills, but it exchanges that for synergy with Grass-type Sun users like Brendan and Lyra. So, Erika is built as a striker. Her low attack stat is mildly concerning because it nerfs her output, but this is a similar situation to Anniversary Steven, where Leafeon makes up for that through raw base power. Here we have Solar Blade. It's dummy strong for a 3-bar move. This has a similar damage quality to 4-bar moves. It works just like Solar Beam, where it has a 2-turn cooldown that you bypass when the weather is sunny. But this is Leafeon's only offense. Erika has a similar playstyle to Silver, where she thrives under sun, but is kinda deadweight outside weather. All of Erika's passives are centered around sun as well. You get Charging Sun 5 to sorta replicate the innate sun multiplier that fire types normally get, and Erika also has a Speeding Sun 3. In conjunction with X Speed, and Erika is a great speed stat, she is an amazing gauge generator, and she will have no issues spamming Solar Blade alongside another striker. Lastly, Solar Propulsion 2 grants Erika a 30% chance to lower the sync countdown when attacking while sun is up. This procs fairly often, and it allows Erika to catch up on turns if you miss a quad Q or some such. Now, the best part of Erika's kit is her trainer move. This grants +2 attack and +1 crit, but when the weather is sunny, you double the amount with regeneration to boot. This means that Leafeon is entirely self-sufficient and doesn't need help buffing up. The intended playstyle here is that you buff once, use Sunny Day, then buff again to maximize your offenses, and you can use a sync move under sun. Speaking of, Erika's tech multiplier is sun-based, and you have innate Soften Up 1 for guaranteed crits. There are no drawbacks here. Erika has all the qualities that top tier units possess. Her kit is centered around a field effect, but she contributes in more significant ways beyond that because of her offensive self-sufficiency. There is no Sun abuser that won't benefit from Leafeon's presence, because it's tacking DPS on top of their output. Erika's greatest competition and partner is Brendan. Besides activating grass-type skills, they overlap in a lot of ways, in a similar vein to Classic Blue and Emmet. They have the same typing, the same buffing efficiency, the same multipliers, they both demand speed support, and their DPS is nearly identical. But Erika provides her own sun. The biggest difference between them is that Erika has a stronger nuke, while Brendan has the AoE nuke because of his 6-star EX striker role. So, 1-5 Leafeon has nothing, as usual. Although the base kit is so solid, I don't think this is a negative per se. 2-5 gives you Solar Flare 5 for a more competent nuke. This is the same as Erika's innate multiplier, so it's cohesive and it's basically given out for free. Erika also gets a 10% multiplier and a speedy entry 1. Safety Tether grants Endure whenever you sink, but it's not like you want to be tanking with Leafeon. It has decent bulk, but it's not a good role for the unit when it lacks defensive buffs. There is also an NPR2 for Sunny Day. I heard people going crazy over this, but I feel this is a similar situation to Ingo, where if you need the NPR, you are playing the battle wrong. With Leafeon and a Sun Abuser is combined output, you shouldn't need more than a couple uses of Sunny Day to finish a stage anyway, and a Sunny Day NPR isn't too relevant with Maxi on the metagame. The full grid is where Leafeon goes absolutely ballistic and functions better as a standalone striker. You get another 10% multiplier, more Sun utility, as well as ramming speed and inertia. This is really big. Backed up by Solar Blade Fast Track 9, you can raise these multipliers without having to spend time clicking X speed, but I would pair this with Lyra or Skyla if I were using this mode anyway. A fun tile here is Super Infliction 9. When you use Sunny Day, you gain super effective up next, which gives Leafeon a really beefy nuke. Erika can erase center Fierce Sync no problem. If you want to see funny numbers, I would run something like this, grabbing Super Infliction as well as the sinking tiles, but a more balanced grid would go for some DPS. Leafeon is a better feed for Sun Dual Strike, and it just benefits more from enhancing Solar Blade. If you are not using Erika's nuke, then you can run a pure DPS grid with some utility. This is a grid that Spark recommends, but if I were building something on my own, I would probably go for the attack plus 20 tile, because that should really help Erika's output. But I am terrible at the math side of things, so I would rather see this in practice. But yeah, I think experienced players realize the potential for this unit right away. Signasud Erika is amazing, a top tier unit. Sun meta is now stronger because of her. It's time for some spooks, my dudes! Here we have a new ghost type deck, Morty and Mega Banette. So, we just happen to be past the time of Anniversary Lily, and Morty is going to have a really hard time competing against her. This unit has a lot of traces that remind me of Sydney and Fall Acerola. It has decent utility, a very strong sync nuke, but low DPS. Banette has decent stats all around, barring its attack. The Mega Evolution grants some offense, but oof. Unlike Signasud Erika, Morty is working with low base power moves, so his DPS suffers as a result. Banette's kit is based around Burn. You have Go Barrel 9 Will-O-Wisp, so you can spread the Burn across the entire enemy team. And it's complemented by Burn Synergy 5 for a 50% multiplier. Your sync is also boosted when the target is burned. The first thing you want to do in a fight is click Will-O-Wisp, because Morty's kit is based around it. Morty enables his multipliers very easily, much like Palentine's Arena, so he doesn't need a burn partner. In fact, he is very competent at assisting other burn synergy users. But the problem with burn meta is that most burn users benefit more from weather than from spreading burn quickly, like with Flannery, Leon, or Holiday Cybold. Leon gets more asteroids from Sunny Day than from Burn Synergy 3. This is a fun gimmick though, and it gives Morty utility we haven't witnessed yet. Morty is also offensively self-sufficient. You have Dire Heal Plus, and the trainer move raises attack, defense, and accuracy to fix Will-O-Wisp misses. Although Morty does appreciate offensive support because he bumps up a little slowly. Now, Pre-Mega Banette has Shadow Claw, which is pathetically weak, but when you Mega Evolve, it gets replaced by Shadow Sneak, complemented by Searing Quick Combo 9. When you attack a target who is burned, you recharge Shadow Sneak MP, so you can use this infinitely. This sounds amazing until you realize that Shadow Sneak is not the most impressive quick move. At 5-5, you are working with a 90 BP move. And the fact that this is gated behind the Mega Evolution is a bit of an issue. This is a similar situation to Diantha, where you are forced to Mega Evolve Fierce Sync in order to maximize this unity's potential, and that lacks flexibility. This is workable because Morty has a very strong Sync Nuke at 3-5, but as we will discuss in a bit, his team compositions suffer from opportunity cost. However, Morty's offense consumes 0 gauges, so he plays well in dual strike team compositions to make up for his lack in DPS. So I would classify Morty as a fun unit. I am not particularly excited about him because he needs some heavy investment just to marginally compete with other sync pairs who have a similar playstyle. As far as the grid goes, 1-5 has Acuity, which concerns me. This might mean Morty's event has accuracy debuffs. Speaking of, Pre-Mega Banette has Wide Awake, which has niche applications as well. 2-5 gives Morty some defensive utility with Vigilance and Shadow Sneak Overwhelm 9, but I wouldn't tank with Banette when the kid lacks recovery tools. The full grid gives you multipliers. Power Posture and Power Reserves tree are difficult to set up, but even with both of these, Morty's DPS doesn't compete with Giovanni, so we are better off focusing on his other strengths. Here we get an extra Shadow Sneak Overwhelm tile, and with Morty's Burn utility, he is actually one of the better sync pairs at crowd controlling physical damage. He is a fun option for stalls, but I would still rather use Champion Iris or Anniversary N if I am looking to debuff the enemy field. Morty's best aspect is his nuke, but there is a big issue with this mode. Morty has Pecking Order, but he cannot debuff attack until he Mega Evolves for his Overwhelm tiles. So he is dependent on other sources of attack debuffs, and chances are those sources can nuke harder than him. Like, let's say I pair this with Champion Iris. She nukes harder than Morty, Mask Royal nukes harder than Morty, Mallow nukes harder than Morty. You can make this work, but I don't see the point if you have a well-built account. There is also this hybrid build that trades nuking power for Overwhelm tiles and Power Posture. But if I were playing this mode, I would just go hard on utility and pair this with a more competent Ghost-type striker. But again, Morty has to take a Fierce Sync for his Mega Evolution to work. Morty is, unfortunately, an underwhelming unit. His lack of a strong DPS really hurts him. You either focus all your resources on augmenting his nuke, or he's just a niche utility sync pair that consumes no gauges. And do know that we have another Ghost Tech Nuker in this batch who is arguably much better. At least Morty's outfit is fucking amazing, so I have no complaints on that front. Simps, DNA is feeding us a banquet this month. If you're not aware, Caitlyn is the official waifu of this channel. So here we have Caitlyn and Mega Sableye, a Dark type support. Because of my favoritism, I was pulling this unit no matter what, but I would say she is the most contentious unit in this batch. I think it's because people aren't correctly assessing her ideal team compositions. Like, I have seen people call her a hyper-defensive unit, but her recovery kinda sucks until her full grid. And you can totally use her to perform precinct clears in Champion Stadium. So I will try to disperse some of those preconceptions. Regardless, Caitlyn is undeniably a defensively oriented support. After Mega Evolving, she has similar bulk to Signature Blue Pre-Mega. And she has Drake's buffing kit, so she can tank for the party and cover you defensively very well. But she has zero offensive presence, and her base kit lacks recovery. She only has Synchro Healing. This is enough for a quick match, but it also demands Sableye's Mega Evolution. Speaking of, Caitlyn also has innate vigilance, so you can use her lucky skill for something else, like Defense Crush or some status immunity. Now, Caitlyn's trainer move is both a blessing and a curse. These buffs attack by 2 stages, and speed and accuracy by 1. Accuracy buffs are appreciable, this is a rare quality. If you Mega Evolve Sableye, the trainer move also summons a shield that prevents status and interferences from affecting the party, but this effect isn't too relevant here. So, if you have been paying attention, you will notice Caitlyn lacks crit support, even on her grid. This is a bit of an issue. Crit buffs are a trait you will find in most top-tier supports. Critical hits are a fundamental aspect of combat in this game. They give you a boost in damage, and it allows your striker to ignore defensive buffs and screens. More often than not, you want your support to buff crit because it hastens your setup. Buffing crit is usually more difficult than buffing attack or special attack. So, the current metagame is hyper-offensive in nature, and it doesn't favor Caitlyn's defensive buffs. This means that in order to make Caitlyn really shine, she has to take advantage of her attack buffs. She needs to be paired with strikers who buff crit quickly, units like Maxi, Anniversary Steven, or V. And notice here that Caitlyn also has quick tempo, which helps in dual strike team compositions. The lack of crit buffs constrains Caitlyn's partners. It doesn't mean that it makes her a sitting duck. One of the more common complaints I have seen regarding Caitlyn is that she is a purely defensive unit. But I don't know, dude. If Caitlyn is a defensive support, it also means Roxanne is a defensive support, because their buffing kits are similar. Caitlyn gets Pep Rally for her trainer move, so she's basically a physical version of Roxanne. Yes, the defense buffs are nice, but you are using her for the attack and speed buffs. You just have to be mindful about the kind of striker you pair with Caitlyn. Now, if you decide to pull for Caitlyn, you also kinda have to commit to her 6-star EX potential. Almost all of Sableye's perks stem from syncing for the first time. When you Mega Evolve, Quick Tempo gets replaced with Opening Blockade, which summons Reflect and Light Screen. You have Synchro Healing, and the grid has a Sync Wall, which summons critical hit immunity. Sableye is a bit of a monster with permanent field effects in Champion Stadium. Caitlyn is one of those sync pairs who really wants Fierce Sync, and you have to adjust accordingly. Sableye is best paired with high DPS loadouts that don't require a Mega Evolution, and this happens to be my specialty. I have a general allergy to 6-star EX strikers because I think they are a really cheap way of clearing content. Conversely, 6-star EX supports have broader utility. Caitlyn is super handy for strikers like Emmet, Furbert or BP Karen, units with fast crit who don't get a whole lot out of Fierce Sync. So ask yourself this question. In this team composition, can I use 6-star EX Leaf, Lily, Elio or Lana? If you answer yes, then Caitlyn also fits the archetype. Anyway, 1-5 is useless. If you pull Caitlyn, you can stop at 2-5. Here you get Trainer Move Pepper Alley 1. This is arguably Caitlyn's most important tile. Caitlyn is actually quite good at preserving move gauge, because she buffs speed quickly, and she is mostly spamming trainer moves. Revenge Boost 3 can be handy. Quick tempo ruins squad queues, so having this doesn't hurt. But I would run something like this. Just grabbing NPRs for every trainer move so you can keep spamming those. I am also grabbing MGRs because this is a tech I am really enjoying with Faulkner lately. Caitlyn never interferes with move gauge, and this random NGR can be clutch in Master Mode. But if you don't care about that, then you can drop those tiles for some defensive utility. The full grid turns Caitlyn into a much sturdier tank. You have Endurance and Fear State 4 to ensure your survival. There is also Healthy Healing, but I don't like this too much on this unit because, again, Caitlyn has an abundance of trainer moves to spam. I dislike Feint Attack Flabbergast for similar reasons, but this can help for stalls or to set up a Pecking Order for a striker. There is also a whole bunch of sinking tiles, but Caitlyn's attack is subpar and she has no multipliers. Given the lack of innate crit buffs, I would never run this as a striker. Sawyer and Pierce are more competent offensively. Lastly, Team Syncure is kinda handy because Caitlyn always plays for Fear Sync, so this can get rid of unpleasant status conditions. If I had a fully gridded Sableye, I would run something like this. I just want Fear State 4 and Endurance, but there is probably better ways to approach this. Pep Rally is just compulsory, which really eats away at Caitlyn's energy. But well, Caitlyn is a decent support. Not incredible, and you kinda have to know your team building to truly capitalize from her perks. But the first thing I am doing is run her alongside Anniversary Steven, because she has a crapload of buffs to enhance good form. She is the perfect support for strikers like him, and she might get better in the future if more physical sync pairs with fast crit are introduced. Coming up next, we have another Galar gym leader. Allister is a ghost type tech with Dynamax, but I don't think there is a whole lot to talk about him. Allister is your run-of-the-mill striker. He has 3 coverage moves, and his trainer move grants him offensive self-sufficiency. While bumping up your offenses, you also get free move next to help with gauge management. I feel there is an intent on using Allister in dual strike team compositions because of this trainer move. Now, the problem is that Allister's special attack is average, his attack is atrocious, and all his moves have relatively low base power. He is competent for ghost and poison weak content, but we gotta look at how Allister can enhance his damage. So, Allister's multipliers remind me a little bit of Lucy. Allister's first tool is Toxic Power 3. Notice you have Hostile Environment 3, so Slush Bomb is guaranteed to proc poison. You may still want to pair Allister with Signature Leaf though, if you want to save time. But he is a competent Toxic Power enabler. You can pair him with Koga, for example. Allister can poison stuff ahead of time, while Koga handles the on-type nuke. Then we have Hold Hostage 3, which is a little more complicated. Currently, the only sync pairs who can apply Restrain are Celine and Nessa, and their Restrain is single target. However, Allister can apply Restrain himself. Gengar has a Gigantamax, so Shadow Ball becomes G-Max Terror instead of a Max Phantasm. In this game, G-Max Terror applies Restrain on the entire enemy field. So great, Allister can handle Toxic Power and hold hostage on his own. This kinda lowers the value of Max Ooze and Max Knuckle for buffing utility though, because if Allister wants to solo strike, he benefits more from Restrain, and G-Max Terror is his only avenue to accomplish that. Now, Allister is the first Dynamax sync pair who has the sync countdown issue. Max moves do not lower the sync countdown. Historically, Signature Leon and Classic Red didn't feel this because they can lower the sync countdown by means of their trainer moves, but Allister doesn't. Given Allister's playstyle, you want to apply Restrain at the earliest convenience, because his tech multiplier also activates when the target is restrained. But if you use G-Max Terror before First Sync, Allister will be delaying the battle by a round, unless you bring someone with sync acceleration like Signature Elesa. And given the playstyle, it's hard to use Allister's max move as a finishing blow, because if you don't bring Celine or Nessa, you want to use G-Max Terror as soon as possible, so you gotta keep this in mind. Also, do know that G-Max Terror is the first source of AoE Restrain, so Allister is now Celine's best friend. She can do 6-star EX nukes more easily with Allister, because she doesn't have to waste time using Spirit Shackle for restraining sync up. Now, the most other part of Allister's kit is Drain Punch. I imagine the conversation at the DNA headquarters went like this. We added too many potion users. What can we use instead? And the result is this thing. The problem here is that Allister's attack stat is horrendous, so unless Drain Punch is super effective, don't expect it to recover a whole lot of health. However, you want to know who has offensive stats this poor? Rosa and Meilin, and their offense is not stopping them from drain tanking. So when I pull Allister, I'll be showcasing a Drain Punch tanking set. It's viable, but it takes a lot of work. Okay, time for the grids. The 1-5 has MGRs, which is okay, I guess. It's better than the previous grids. And the 2-5 expands Allister's multiplier options. You have Slush Bomb Toxic Power 2 and Shadow Ball Hold Hostage 2, So these are cohesive multipliers depending on the weakness you want to capitalize from. There is also Drain Punch, Mad Strength 4 and Natural Remedy for the tanking cell I mentioned, but it's really memey and I would not recommend it in serious applications. Then there is Virulent Toxin 5. When the target is poisoned, it increases Allister's zinc damage. So the intended playstyle is that you buff Slush Bomb to inflict poison, use G-Max Terror, and then you can nuke to erase something. Brainy Rush 2 increases Allister's special attack after sinking, but your setup should be complete beforehand, so I wouldn't normally recommend this. As for the full grid, we have Dynamax tiles to enhance Allister's bombs, as well as Max Super Preparation 4. This adds super effective up next after Gengar Dynamaxes. So again, this is drilling home to the fact that you want to Dynamax before sinking to enhance Allister's nuke. Grappling Sink inflicts restraint on the target after sinking, but it's pointless when you want to inflict a restraint before sinking because of how Allister's innate sink multiplier functions. Then there is Sharp Entry 1, one of my favorite passives in this game. If you pick this and use Allister's trainer move, he maximizes his critical hit rate, and you can use a support like Elio or Rosa to complement his offense. Lastly, we also have Super Duper Effective 2 for an extra boost in Allister's DPS. The standard grid I would recommend would be a Sync Nuking grid paired with Signal Suralesa, but if you don't want to sync with Allister, then you can go harder on multipliers. Allister is just one of those sync pairs who really changes depending on how you want to play him, so I don't feel comfortable suggesting standard grids, but going for the Dynamax style as well as Super Duper Effective 2 is always a good idea. Ultimately, Allister is somewhat bland. He is an effective striker, but he is not hitting any DPS or sync nuking thresholds we haven't witnessed before. And the nature of his restraint multipliers and G-Max Terror kinda mess up his flexibility. Last but not least, our boy Darach is now playable. Here we have Darach and Staraptor, a flying type tech. This guy has a lot of the traits that I love in sync pairs. He has good damage, good utility, a great sync nuke, but he demands a little bit of mindfulness when team building. Darach here is our first proper Braybird user. Striker Farfetch'd beat Darach to it, but that thing is a meme, so it's not even worth talking about. Braybird is a recoil move, but Darach has a large HP pool and innate stun fast 7. This is the most aggressive recoil reduction we have witnessed in a move like this. With some grid enhancements, Darach is perfectly capable of spamming Braybird, but given Staraptor is low attack stat and the nature of its skill, it's not its primary function. Then we have utility moves. First up, we have Defog, which means Lycia lost exclusivity to that. Defog lowers evasion, but Darach has Ripple Effect 9, so this debuff becomes AoE. This is a decent way to fix the accuracy of shaky moves like Iron Tail or Hyper Beam, and it's a good countermeasure for stages that spam evasion buffs like Fighting Weak Karen or Fairy Weak Marshall. Furthermore, Defog also removes all terrain effects, like electric terrain as well as reflect and light screen. Most importantly, defog is currently the only way to remove critical shield. Darach gives you a free 250 points in Champion Stadium Master Mode because he can clear reflect, light screen and critical shield just by clicking defog. Darach's next utility move is Feather Dance. This drops the target's attack by 2 stages, but again, because of Ripple Effect 9, this effect becomes AoE. This is an amazing crowd control tool for stages that are really aggressive on physical damage, like all Bruno and Marshall iterations in Champion Stadium. And you are also incentivized to spam Feather Dance, because Darach has innate power posture, as well as innate Pecking Order. Unfortunately, Defense Crush 2 as a lucky skill won't proc with defog or Feather Dance. We just have historical evidence of that. So using Darach is a little less efficient than Champion Iris or Mask Royal. The reason their debuffs are so good is because they also drop defense to augment your damage. Relative to them, Darach's utility is purely defensive. Now, Darach's trainer move is also quite good. It raises Staraptor's attack by 3 stages, and it also adds regeneration to combat recoil damage. But more importantly, it raises the party's speed by 3 stages. And considering that Staraptor itself has a phenomenal speed stat, this is Kukui tier, Darach is quite handy for gauge management. However, this trainer move only has one use, so you cannot use Darach like you would use Masker Royal to maximize inertia. Darach's biggest flaw is that he requires crit support. His Kid nor Grid provide crit buffs, but with the abundance of crit supports these days, you can use Hop or BP Surge and you are good to go. Darach's base Kid is really good. His 1-5 provides a ton of value. Accuracy support, crowd control, good damage, and a passable sync nuke. If you want Darach to strike, he is perfectly capable of doing so, but he can play support as well. Compositionally, he pairs well with power posture users, like BP Zinnia and Mallow, and he can also enable wide open Lycia. AoE evasion buffs are unique, and this is an appreciable aspect of Darach's kit. But I would still put Darach below Mask Royal. I just feel that Incineroar has a wider utility with its defense debuffs and a faster nuking setup with its 1-5 grid. Anyway, the 1-5 grid is trash, you know, the usual. 2-5 has Lithe, Haste, and Terrify 1 for miscellaneous defensive utility. The trainer move also gains an NPR too, but I am not a fan of the chance when the Darach only has one use, so I would rather go for trainer move Pepper Alley 1 for the guaranteed buff. Darach also gains a Pecking Order tile, so this is just like Cygnus with Erika, where the grid gives Darach the exact same multiplier as the innate one. It's cohesive and doesn't trouble you with additional setup. There is a defog NPR2 tile, but most moves gain 100% accuracy at -2 evasion, like Hypnosis and Iron Tail for example. -3 evasion helps with Mega Kick, but I cannot think of another move that requires accuracy support this extensive. Furthermore, Demobilize 1 lowers the enemy team's evasion by 1 stage, but like I mentioned, going beyond -2 evasion is kind of redundant. Unless you have a multiplier derived from evasion. So Darach's full grid has this thing called easy target. The more you lower evasion, the stronger your nuke. I would normally recommend pairing this with Lycia for faster evasion debuffs, but Darach has this new passive called Way Down 4. This means that he has a 50% chance to lower evasion AoE when using his moves, and the description here is fairly specific. This should work with Feather Dance, Defog, and Bravebird. Darach can bump up evasion debuffs by himself. So, by grabbing Easy Target, Pecking Order, and the Sinking Tiles, we have the strongest Flying type Sing Nuke in the game. You guys wanted an Anniversary Steven buff? Well, here you go. Besides that, Darach gains more Bravebird multipliers and sustainability, with Power Flux 3, Wide Open, Fear State 4, and Standfast 5. There is this thing called Pinch Hitter 3, which buffs attack by 3 stages when Darach reaches critical health. But realistically, you are better off bringing Hilbert or something like that. There is also Feather Dance Slow-Mo, which allows Feather Dance to debuff speed. This has no advantages for Darach himself, but it allows him to assist Cakewalk or Hunter's Instinct users. He would make an okay partner for Getsis, for example. The basic grid I would run would be centered on Darach's nuke. So something like this, grabbing all the utility, the evasion debuffs, Pep Rally just in case, and this will be quite potent. But if you don't care about the nuke because you are using a 6-star EX support buff, for example, then you can run a DPS grid with Standfast 5, as well as Way Down 4, so you can enhance Wide Open. You will of course spam Feather Dance and hope to proc Way Down 4, otherwise you could maybe use Defog a few times. But Bravebird can proc Way Down, so you know, you just go to town with good old Darach here. So Darach is fairly complex, but he is a versatile unit. I don't think there is a correct way to play him. Rather, he has several viable modes. Like, don't be surprised if I 6-star EX Darach. This guy is the exact kind of unit I love running. He is a damage dealer and a team player at the same time. Oh boy, but at long last, we are done with this Datamine here. Oy, 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 oy. Apologies for the delay, but I have been a little busy with my personal life in these past few weeks. Nothing crazy, it's just work stuff, but you know, we all have our priorities. But I hope you enjoyed the video all the same. Thank you for watching, take care, good luck on your pulls, and I hope to see you another time.